Kia ora koutou. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another Privacy Week webinar. Today's webinar is about enhancing your online privacy uh, with tips to stay safer online. My name is Michael De Tom. I am the Chief Legal Advisor at NetSafe. I will be telling you who NetSafe is and what we do in a bit more detail later, but very briefly, we are an online safety organization and we provide education advice and complaint resolution services when it comes to online safety. I'll be talking to you for about 40 minutes. There'll be an opportunity to ask questions and answers. On your screen, you should see a Q&A box. If you do have questions, type them in there, and then I will endeavor to answer them at the end of the session. So what are we going to cover today? Well, I will say a little bit about why online privacy matters and what online privacy risks there are. Then the core of the session is some hints and tips about how to enhance your online privacy and protect your online personal information. And then I will take you through what you can do when things go wrong and how you can use, for example, NetSafe services to remedy anything that's gone wrong for you. This is a beginner session, so you don't need to have any prior knowledge to participate. A lot of what I will say, however, is what I would describe as common sense. That said, we often don't take the time to step back and do the things that are relatively obvious or available to us. So it's a good chance to remind yourself about what you can do, and then perhaps after the session, have a go at looking into some of the things that you can do to change your settings or protect yourself. So, online privacy risks. Well, as we all know, much of modern life is now conducted online. In the past, this would have been a face-to-face seminar, but you've joined via Zoom. We communicate with our friends and family on messaging services. We post about our lives online. We shop online. We also have to interact with government online. So if we need to update a license or renew a passport, pay a fine, all of this is happening online. We often have no choice when we're acting online or participating online to share personal information. We're required to give our names. We're required to give our email addresses, our postal addresses. We're required sometimes to give bank account details. When we're giving this over to organizations, that's when we lose a bit of control about what happens to that personal information. We provide information and we trust the organization will protect that information and use it in the right way. We also leave what we call a digital footprint every time we interact online. So every time we log in, every time we use a browser, every time we go to a certain web page, we are leaving a little bit of information about what we've done and potentially who we are. So if we're using an internet browser, our browser history is saved. That browser might use what are called cookies. So that's technology which captures certain types of data about our interaction with that website. We might be giving away our location. So if we've got location settings turned on, apps can follow us around and know exactly where we've been. Websites know what we've purchased online. And then the apps we use collect general information about how often we use the app, when we use the app, what we're doing when we're on the app. But our digital footprint also includes things like what we choose to do online. So if we use social media, if we're posting on Instagram or TikTok, that has the potential to reveal personal information about ourselves. So if you are, for example, posting that you're about to go on holiday, just be aware that if you're posting your boarding pass, that might be revealing not only your first and last name, which people might know, but it might reveal your middle name, and you might not intend that. Our personal information and our personal data is valuable. So it's valuable to advertisers who want to sell us products. It's valuable to malicious actors like hackers and scammers. And it's valuable to governments. Governments might want to know what the sentiment is like on a particular issue. They can see that online. They can obtain population statistics from certain interactions we might have online, for example. The valuable information that we give over can be useful to others and can lead to unintended consequences or bad things happening to us online. So we can be scammed, or we could be bullied or harassed, for example, by visitors to our social media web pages. So who's watching us when we're online? So as I said before, websites collect information about our activities. They do this through cookies or third-party tracking devices, or sorry, third-party tracking software. So they can obtain information, for example, about where we click on a website, what particular pages we use, how often we go to that website. And all of this over time can start building up a picture about who we are and what we do. Similarly, apps collect a lot of information about us. So depending on the permissions that we've given to those apps, they might collect background information, background data, again, the time of day that we log in or use that app, if there's location settings, where we are. Again, a lot of personal information can be built up over time, which can then be used either to sell to third parties or to advertisers, for example. ISPs, internet service providers, and platforms similarly collect information about us. And as I said before, advertisers and data brokers. But again, it's obvious, it's also worth pointing out that people who visit or follow you on your social media pages are collecting or watching information about you. So it's important to be aware about what you are sharing. So much of the time we have positive online interactions. Technology is part of our lives, as I said before, and we use it to live our lives more often than not in positive ways. But we know that there are malicious actors out there. There are people who can obtain, buy or sell personal information about us from data brokers. So from the picture that has been built up about us via the website or the apps, that information, as I said before, is valuable to advertisers who might buy that information from a data broker, for example. But our personal information can also be obtained from illegitimate sources, for example, on the dark web. So if a website that you have interacted with and provided personal information to in the past has been hacked, for example, that information might be out there on the dark web available for malicious actors to use. So there is actually a way for you to check if your email address or other personal information has been compromised in a data breach in the past. So I've just put here a website. It's called Have I Been Pwned? But you can type in your email address and it'll list out the public sources of information about your email address, for example. So I did it just before this presentation, and I can see that I have been the subject of a data breach, or my information has been the subject of a data breach in the past. It even includes some old passwords that I used. So it's really a useful way to find out what is out there publicly, and as a result, what can I do now to protect that information or change my passwords, for example. And I'll be moving on in a bit to tell you about some of the security things or security settings you can do to help protect that information. Malicious actors can also trick us into passing over personal information for later use. So what's called phishing. And I will tell you a bit more about what phishing is on the next slide. But again, information can be obtained from social media. So I call the slide malicious actors, but there could be people who you know, who you were connected to in the past, but you have a dispute with now. If they are still a follower or can see your information, have a think about what they know about you and what they can do with that information. So what is phishing? So phishing is fraudulent or fake communication, such as an email or text, phone call, or a website, often impersonating a reputable company or organization. And it's used to induce you to share information such as a password or a credit card number to then use either to get into an account, get into your bank account, or in some other way use the information against you. A lot of the times you will see emails which suggest that something's about to expire, that you've only got 24 hours to act, or there might be an offer in there which looks really good, in fact, too good to be true. Other ways to call this is scam and spam emails. But we know that scammers and phishers are becoming more and more sophisticated. And with the rise of AI and deep fakes, we now know that this technology can be used to impersonate voices, can be used to create deep fakes. That's AI created or AI generated pictures, which don't represent reality. So what can we do about all of these things? So I'm going to move on now to talk about some hints and tips, what you can do to protect yourselves a bit better when you are interacting online and sharing personal information and personal data about yourself. So let's start with the obvious. Passwords. They're often your first line of defense. The general advice is to use long and unique passwords. So whenever we are signing up to a new service or logging into a new app, have a think about the password that you use. More often than not, you will be prompted to input something that uses a lowercase or an uppercase, a number, a particular character. There is a reason for that. The more complex the password is, the harder it is for that password to be guessed. You'd be surprised, but people still use very simple passwords. For example, password. They also reuse the same password on many different websites. I have to admit that I'm guilty of this. I have a plethora of websites or apps that I use, and it's obviously easy just to use the same password. But the point here is, if you're using the same password on multiple sites, if that password becomes known, and as I said before, I know in my case, my password was compromised, an old password was compromised and it's out there. Think about how often or how many times someone could use that same password to get into all the accounts that you've used that one password for. There are things, however, called password managers, and this is a way to manage your passwords in a much simpler way. So they're essentially a password vault where you just use a single password to get into the password manager, But thereafter, the software, the technology of that password manager manages your passwords. So it remembers which sites you've gone to and which particular site, which particular password you've used. It will help generate long and unique passwords for you. And it's a way of preventing you from reusing the same password on different sites. Another piece of advice is to use what's called two-factor authentication. So this is where you might, in the first instance, input a password. So that's your first line of defense. But then you're prompted to enter a one-time passcode or a PIN number, which is sent to you, your mobile phone by text message, for example. So many banks or other institutions will require you to use these by default. But you do have an option to turn this on many other applications. And again, the advice is if you want that added layer of protection is to turn two-factor authentication on. And then lastly on this slide, again, the advice is think about using biometric authentication. Most mobile phones now use face recognition technology. You also have the option to use that as an alternative when you are logging into certain apps. Again, this is a good way of enhancing that first gatekeeping to getting into the app. You can also have a think about your security settings. So how do you secure the hardware? How do you secure the actual device that you use? Are there ways on your particular device, for example, to encrypt the data on it? So that means that people can't view that data unless they have a particular de-encryption key. Do you update your software regularly? Again, the advice here is that if you keep your software up to date, your operating system, your apps, then you've got the most up-to-date version, which will have remedied any known security vulnerabilities that those apps might have. So if you're prompted to update, the advice is you probably should update. There are ways that you can stay safer online when you're browsing. So do you use what's called a virtual private network? Now, these are not required to have a safe online experience, but depending on where you might be in the world or what particular sites you might be accessing, a virtual private network will hide what's called your IP address and show that you might be somewhere else, for example. And it will stop the people that I said before, malicious actors or others, building up the real picture about where you are or what you might be doing. If you're out and about and you don't have enough data on your phone and you want to log into your bank account, have a good think about whether it's really appropriate to do that over an unsecured public Wi-Fi network. Again, I'm quite tempted to use these if I have run out of data, but I do take a step back and think, maybe it's not the best thing to do to log into my bank account using this network. So again, if you have no choice but to log into the public Wi-Fi network, think hard about what you then decide to use once you're on it. You can also use certain private browsing features on internet browsers, for example. You're also able to turn on encrypted messaging on many apps. In fact, most messaging apps now by default have end-to-end encryption. And what this means is that only the sender and only the user can read the message. When that message is being sent over the network, it can't be intercepted and read unless you have the specific technology to decrypt it. And as I understand it, that technology only exists on the sender and receiver's phone. So WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, for example, they have end-to-end encryption engaged by default. Another key way you can stay safer online is to review your privacy settings. Now, it may not be obvious, but many apps do allow you to change the way you interact with that app. They allow you to change what information is collected about you. They may allow you to change who can see you or who can interact with you. So you are able to change settings on, for example, your Facebook page, your Instagram, your TikTok, and you can review them at any time and make them more or less available depending on your personal preferences and needs. I would highly recommend that you check out the NetSafe guides about each of the social media platforms and what you can do to protect yourself. So I've given you the website there, but we take you through the main platforms like Discord, TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat, and we tell you how those particular apps work, what the particular privacy features are that that app offers, and we tell you about what the consequences are if you turn something on or off. So that's a really good resource to help you enhance your privacy when you're using those particular platforms. Similarly, you're able to review who you've given permission to follow your location. So there are a lot of apps which only really work if you do allow location to be used. So dating apps, if you're using Tinder or Grindr or whatever, these apps are location based and work best when you allow location to be shared. Similarly, Google Maps or Apple Maps or other map apps only work if you allow location to be used. But there are many other apps which don't really have a legitimate reason to follow your location, but which might have as a default setting required you or allowed you, or you have allowed them to follow your location. So what you can do is go into your settings, go into your location settings, and see who you've given permission to follow your location. And if it doesn't feel right, if it's not appropriate, you can turn those on and off. This next slide is really to encourage you to think about what you share. So if you are sharing information online and you've got a choice to do that, you have a TikTok page, you post on Instagram or wherever, have a good think about what you are posting and who can see it. Do you have a public profile? Do you intend only that your friends, close friends and family view what you see? Do you know whether or not you have allowed other members of the public who you don't know to view your social media posts? And then if you are posting, have a think about what's in that picture or in that post. Are you posting information about other people? Are you posting information about where exactly you are or what you're doing? Have a think about what that information could be used for. Be aware also that even if you're not posting information that you yourself have created, like pictures or thoughts, that sharing or resharing what others have posted can also build up a picture about you. So if you're in the habit of regularly reposting other posts, for example, that could identify your political leanings, for example. And of course, you may be okay with that, but if you don't want people to know that sort of information, then have a think about what your resharing reveals about you. The next hint here is to think about security versus convenience. So when we're online shopping, we will often have the ability to store our credit card details. If we're buying food from the supermarket and we trust the website, that might be okay. If we are buying 30 different products over a month and we're inputting our credit card details and saving them on 30 different websites, have a good think about how often you're doing that and what the consequences would be if your credit card details were revealed in a data hack or a security breach, for example. The general advice here then is if you don't have to store your credit card details, you probably shouldn't. And then be alert to phishing. Be alert to those scammers who are trying to dupe you into sharing information. So if you're sent an email or a text, have a good look at it. You might be told by Waka Kotahi that your registration is expiring. Is it really? Have a look at how things are spelt. Have a look at what the sender's address is. Oftentimes they will mask who they are, and if you just click on it, you'll see that they are not actually from Waka Kotahi, they're from some completely gobbledygook address, which has no bearing to Waka Kotahi, for example. If you're in any doubt about the veracity of the information, the veracity of the text, then don't share the information. You're always able to contact the particular organization who has purported to send the information, the communication to you, and check with them. And then finally, stay informed. You're doing that right now. You've joined a webinar. You're concerned about your own privacy and that of others. Stay up to date. Consult things like the NetSafe website to see what the latest scams or issues might be. So I'm going to move on now to talk about what to do when things go wrong. So despite having done all of the above, something bad might still have happened to you. You might have been the victim of a data breach. You might have posted something online innocuously, realizing actually you didn't really want to do that. You might have shared, say, an intimate image with your partner, and you've now broken up with your partner, and your partner is using that intimate image against you. So there is help and advice available depending on the particular issue you might be facing. So if you have been the subject, or you know that you are potentially a subject of a data breach, that your data has been compromised, or you think someone has hacked your device in some way, there are organizations like ID Care who can assist you with resetting your device and protecting your credentials, for example. If you've been contacted by an organization and that organization has informed you that you have been the subject of a data breach and they are encouraging you to change your password, you should follow that advice. If in doubt about an issue, or you are concerned that you might have had your details compromised in another way, for example, you think a scammer has got hold of your bank account details because you unfortunately provided information in a phishing attack, contact the relevant organization to let them know about your concerns. Ask them to put a hold on your transactions, for example, while you sort things out. And you can also contact us at NetSafe. And I will tell you a bit more about what we do in a second and how you can use our services. So I'm just going to talk a bit about what's called the Harmful Digital Communications Act and how we operate under that act, how we, NetSafe, operate under that act, and how we can help you under the HDCA. So what is NetSafe's online safety role? Well, we are an independent nonprofit online safety organization of about 25 years experience. We were appointed as the so-called approved agency under the Harmful Digital Communications Act in 2016. The act was passed in 2015, but we were appointed in 2016. And under that act, we offer a complaints resolution service. We provide advice and education about how you can stay safer online. And we create and maintain relationships with online safety organizations, with the platforms as a way to help achieve the purposes of the Act. For example, get content removed if it's in breach of the Act or in breach of a platform's terms and conditions, for example. So we operate a 7-day-a-week, 365-day of the year online advice service on our website. We have a 363 days of the year telephone helpline that you can call between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. And we receive upwards of 25,000 reports per year about people who have either been a victim of an online issue, they've suffered harm as a result of a digital communication, or they have been the victim of a scam, for example. So what is the purpose of the HDCA? So it's to deter, prevent, and mitigate harm caused to individuals by digital communications, and it's to provide victims of harmful digital communications with a quick and efficient means of redress. So our specific role, let's say specific role under the HDCA, is to receive and assess complaints about harm, to investigate those complaints, and then to use advice, negotiation, mediation, and persuasion as appropriate to resolve complaints. There are some thresholds in the Act. So there has to have been a digital communication. This is a very broad definition, but would cover text messages, posts on social media, emails, etc. One of the 10 communications principles has to have been engaged or breached. I haven't set them out here, and I'm not going to set them out in detail, but I will point to 2 particular ones which are relevant in the context of privacy. And the digital communication has caused or is likely to cause serious emotional distress to an individual. So if you meet those thresholds, then the Act is engaged. So the principles that are relevant in the context of online privacy are principles 1 and 7. So principle 1 says that a digital communication should not disclose sensitive personal facts about an individual. And principle 7 says a digital communication should not contain a matter that is published in breach of confidence. So if you have had a digital communication posted about you or received a digital communication that discloses sensitive personal facts about you or someone else, or has published something that's in breach of confidence, you've told a secret to someone in confidence and that's been published, you may have a remedy under the Harmful Digital Communications Act. So what can NetSafe actually do, or what are the resolutions that are available under the HDCA? Well, NetSafe is able to ask platforms, the likes of Instagram or TikTok, to remove content. So we have what is called trusted flagger status with the platforms. But if someone has made a complaint to us and the thresholds are met, we can then, on your behalf, contact the platform. And if we think that the content at issue is in breach of either the HDCA or in breach of the platform's own terms and conditions, we can request that that content be taken down on your behalf. Now, the decision to remove that content is the platform's. NetSafe is not an enforcement agency. We can't require that content to be removed, but we do have a high success rate. And the content I'm talking about here are things like intimate images, for example, so sensitive personal facts. Or there's a fact that you don't want the world at large to know. It's true, but you don't want it to be on someone else's profile, someone else's webpage for the world at large to see. There are other ways you can get intimate content in particular removed, and we can work with you if you're the victim of intimate image abuse to get that content taken down. I've got on this slide 2 websites that can help in that regard. So one is called Stop NCII, and NCII is non-consensual intimate images. and the other one is called Take It Down. Stop NCII is for people 18 and above, and Take It Down is for those under 18. But essentially, if there has been intimate content, an intimate image that has been shared online, we can work with these websites who create what's called a hash. So that's like a digital fingerprint about the image, and they share that out to all the people who have, or the platforms have signed up to their service. And in one fell swoop, those all copies of those images can be removed from the internet. So that's a really important way to get, some control back over what can sometimes be a really distressing incident for you. NetSafe can also approach what we call the alleged producer, the person who is alleged to have produced the particular content, and ask them to take particular actions. And then if all else fails and NetSafe's not been able to resolve the complaint to your satisfaction, there is the ability under the HDCA to go to court and obtain a binding order. So what are the orders that the court can make? So the court can require that content be removed or modified. It can require an apology. It can require other actions against the defendant, so the alleged producer. The court also has powers against internet service providers and online content hosts, for example, to reveal the identity of anonymous posters. So on a lot of occasions, you might have an inkling about who's made a digital communication about you and has caused you harm, but you don't know for sure that person is hiding behind a particular username or a particular account, and you don't know for sure. There is the ability under the HDCA to get what is called an unmasking order from the court to reveal the IP address or other details which might reveal the account holder. And that's an important way of, again, gaining back some control over personal information about you that might have been shared contrary to the act. So, in conclusion, I've taken you through some of the online privacy risks and why online privacy is important. I've taken you through some ways that you can protect your personal information, ways that you can change your settings, for example. I've encouraged you to stay informed about privacy and learn about ways you can protect yourself and developments in the way apps work, the way technology works. And I pointed you to ways you can help yourself or services you can inquire about if things have gone wrong, and made you aware that sometimes there could be a remedy under the Harmful Digital Communications Act, for example. So just to finish off before I attempt to answer some of your Q&A, you do have control over some of your personal information and the way you use and share it. Even when you don't, you can protect yourself by using strong passwords and two-factor authentication. You do have the ability to review your privacy and security settings on the technology and apps that you use. There are some privacy enhancing tools that you can use, or settings on browsers, for example. If you know about what phishing is and how it works, you can be that bit more alert to scams. And then the final thing I would say is share this knowledge. I'm happy to share these slides with everyone, but the more you and your friends know about what you can do to protect yourself, the more you will protect your personal information and have a more positive experience online. And then finally, here are the contact details for NetSafe. You can email us, call us, or text us. And earlier on the slide, I gave our web address, so netsafe.org.nz. So I am now going to attempt to answer some of your questions. So we've got about just over 15 minutes, um, and I will go through and have a look at what I can answer. If I'm unable to answer, uh, I I may be able to contact people individually, but I'll go through each question and see what information I might be able to provide. So the first question, the internet is so confusing and sometimes feel like internet security concerns mean you can't do anything without cookies, without hackers, etc. If we can remember one big thing that would make us more secure as non-techies, what would that be? Good question. Um, I would I would say the one big thing is um, to look at the NetSafe guidance on how you can change your privacy settings on the apps that you use. More often than not, we are using probably two or three apps. We have our go-to social media app. Have a look at that, the particular advice for that particular app, and make changes to your settings. And that's probably one way that might help you feel like you have a bit more control over what you can do. Can you please explain about cookies and how we should respond to cookie preferences to be safe? So I should say at the outset, I am not a technology expert, but my understanding about cookies are that they it's a piece of code, a bit of software that websites use to obtain information about you, primarily so that the website you're using can be optimized and work for everyone. Um, as a result of a decision in the European Union, you will now, in many instances, be asked whether you agree to cookies when you visit a website. Um, the reason people ask you about cookies is that if you give broad permissions, you're allowing those cookies to obtain more information about you. And that information is used not only to make changes to the website, but also to be sold to advertisers or data brokers, as I explained. If you understand a bit more about cookies and what they are, um, if you're prompted when you visit a website whether you accept the cookies or not, um, have a think about what that website is, where that information might go. Personally, I always try to choose the option that doesn't allow the sharing of information. I only, for example, allow essential or required cookies only. The other thing to note is that you can go into your web browser, your on your phone or computer, and you can remove cookies. So even if you have given permission in the past, you can delete permissions or past permissions. Next question, what can we do if we suspect our computer has been hacked? First action may be to turn off the device, but going forward, what can we do to continue using the device? Well, I hope I answered some of those in the presentation, but that is, the things you can do are make sure that you've got the most up-to-date version of the app or the software that you're using. Think about using encryption tools. If none of that works, then have a think about contacting an organization like ID Care, and they can have a good look at your device. For example, if you really think that someone's got in there illegitimately, they can help with that. Next question is quite a long one. I might skip over that just for time and come back to it if I have time. Next question, is there a preferred or recommended password manager? I am not an expert on all password managers, I'm afraid, and I wouldn't want to give a particular endorsement. So I would recommend you do your own research about what is being offered, whether you have to pay for it, for example, and have a look at some reviews online. Is it safe to get iPhone to choose the password? Good question. Um, again, I wouldn't want to endorse whether Apple as a company um, is good or not at choosing the password. Um, I do understand that the password that is generated is generally unique and pretty long and difficult to guess. I personally do use the recommended passwords uh, that say Apple suggests. And so far I've been okay. I know that's not necessarily um, the best answer, but I'm not aware of any advice to the contrary. I'm not aware that anyone has suggested that the password suggested by an iPhone or a MacBook is illegitimate or wrong. What makes a password manager more secure than the site you're using? If the password manager were hacked, the damage would be far worse. Well, as I understand it, the password managers do use different protocols and encryption and decryption within their systems. Um, but it's a fair concern. Again, I mean, the point about a password manager is that uh, you're not having to use the same password all the time. Again, if you look at reviews online or you're sure that the password manager is pretty safe, then it does provide a level of assurance. I'm not aware of password managers having been hacked. That is their one and only concern, and so they do, as I understand it, invest a lot of money in development and ensuring that their product is as safe as it can be. Next question, is it safe to chat on the app, WhatsApp, Discord, when on public Wi-Fi? That's a good question. As I understand it, if you are using end-to-end encryption, even if you are on public Wi-Fi, that public Wi-Fi doesn't mean that the end-to-end encryption doesn't work or is turned off. So I think it would be safe to assume that even on public Wi-Fi, end-to-end encryption, if your messenger uses end-to-end encryption, still works. Next question, if we're unsure or worried about past digital footprint, are there any tools that can report back on what's known about you online? So I did refer to the website called Have I Been Pwned, which is how you pronounce it. That can tell you if you have been the subject of a hack. Again, you can do your own Google searches about your name. So you can put quote marks around your name to find, the exact spelling, the exact first name, last name. In the EU, for example, although this right doesn't yet exist in New Zealand, you have what's called the right to be forgotten. So if there's information about you that is old or irrelevant or is harming you, you do have the right to request that information to be removed as a matter of law in the EU. That is something that we at NetSafe have advocated for, that New Zealand government and Parliament considers. But of course, you're also able to contact the website or whoever you might find that holds information about you and request deletion or correction under the Privacy Act, for example, under Information Privacy Principle 7. How do you prevent credit cards being saved by vendors? Can you reverse this once it's happened? Good question. Most websites ask if you want the information to be saved. If you don't want it to be saved, make sure that you don't check the box that gives that permission. If you think the vendor has obtained or saved the information about you contrary to your desires, again, you can request directly that vendor, that website, remove that information about you. You do have rights to first make a request under IPP6 and or removal or correction under IPP7. Next question. I'm concerned that more online providers are now starting to ask for ID details, e.g. Airbnb, a copy of driver's license, for example, and I'm concerned that could be hacked or sold on. Yes, that is a legitimate concern. Every time you go online, think about what is being asked of you. Think about what alternatives there are. If you don't feel comfortable providing the information, is there an alternative website or provider that doesn't ask that information? More often than not, we are engaging with foreign websites. They may have obligations to collect particular information about people. There could be, for example, money laundering regulations which require them to collect more information about an individual. In particular, in the case of financial institutions, they are obliged to know their customer and make sure that they do collect relevant information, including ID information. So I guess the answer to this is it depends. If you're concerned, think about alternatives. Think about contacting the organization, the website, and ask why do they need the information? Is there another way that you can provide that information, for example? Next question, could you give us some examples of some common online scams? E.g. the Prince of Nigeria email that rotated around asking for a one-off payment. So NetSafe, on our website, we do have a list of some common scams. So there are obviously things like people impersonating an organization, whether that's IRD or your bank or whatever. They'll send you an email asking you or prompting you to change or log in and use this particular link. There are romance scams where someone might befriend you online and strike up a romance and then encourage you to send them money because they or a family member are in distress. And then there are some quite awful and serious scams like what's called sextortion, where you might have befriended someone online, ended up sharing nude images, and then the person unmasks themselves and seeks to blackmail you and say, unless and until you pay me some money, I will keep these images and I will threaten to send them to your contacts. We know that this is a growing type of scam and it affects in particular young boys, young teens, so between 12 and 14. Yeah, a particularly unsavory type of scam. But probably the best place to look is our website to give you a bit more, some more examples of those. What can I do if I'm cloned on Facebook? Well, you can make a complaint to NetSafe. You can make a complaint to Facebook. Facebook, as I understand it, is against their terms and conditions for someone to impersonate you or to clone you. And you can request that the cloned information about you be deleted. We can also at NetSafe try to use our trusted flagger status to get that cloned information removed. I do have to say, however, that it is increasingly difficult. And it is a real issue that people are being cloned, and that cloned account, usually a scammer, is trying to contact that person's legitimate friends and family to ask for money or further personal information. There is also the possibility, potentially, to pursue an unmasking order under the HDCA, depending on where the person might be based. But yeah, we are aware that it is quite difficult to get some cloned accounts removed. Next question, does the HDCA apply if there's been no harm? So if it's a non-offensive or non-sensitive image of me or my child posted online. I mean, the quick answer to that is no. The HDCA does require harm, which means serious emotional distress, and in particular for the court to act. So if you wanted to pursue a court order, you do have to have met the thresholds. That said, if you make a complaint to NetSafe, we will try and help people who make a complaint to us, whether or not you formally meet the thresholds. We can provide a lot of self-help advice and assistance. If it's a non-offensive or a non-sensitive image, we can tell you ways and means to try to get that image removed, for example. But generally speaking, for the more involved resolution options, like contacting the online content host or NetSafe contacting the alleged producer, we would have to be satisfied that there had been an element of emotional distress, for example. Does NetSafe work outside New Zealand? No, we are a New Zealand-based organization. We generally seek to help New Zealanders. We do maintain relationships with foreign online content hosts, for example, as we're required to by the Act. So that is an element of working outside New Zealand. But generally speaking, we won't seek to resolve a complaint by someone who was not in New Zealand or wasn't in New Zealand at the material time that digital communication was alleged to have occurred. Is there business safety with work computers, tools, etc.? I'm not sure I understand this particular question. So I think, yeah, if you're being, I think I understand what's being asked. If for example, you are at your business and someone is stalking or harassing you or whatever. I mean, a lot of the advice that I provided earlier is, you can change settings. You can get in touch with your IT department to ensure that, the security and privacy settings are optimized. The HDCA doesn't apply to businesses, but it can apply to individuals who are affected within that business, for example. So there is a possibility under the Act for that. In terms of cybersecurity, the agency called CERT, formerly called CERT, which is now part of the National Cybersecurity Centre, they are probably the best agency to provide information about what you can do to enhance your business or work cybersecurity. I think we have unfortunately hit the hour. I haven't got through all the questions, and there are still quite a few more to go, and I don't think I will get through them. So I apologize that I haven't been able to answer everyone's question. But thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much for asking questions. If you do want to follow up with any particular questions and you aren't able to find an answer by looking at our website in the first instance or Googling, then I have got our contact details here. If you want to follow up something, then if you mention that this is a follow-up from the Privacy Week webinar, then that will be the best way for me to have a look at it and come back to you. Just to finish off, I should say that none of what I've said today is legal advice. It's common sense advice, as I said at the outset. But I hope it has been useful, and I hope you all go away now and have a think about is there one or two things that you could do to enhance your privacy that you weren't aware about? So thank you very much and have a good afternoon.